Hi. I'm doing a recap of an evening that we held at the Real Estate Action Group on May 11, in which we essentially talked about 100 different things from financing to the new world we find ourselves in, as we do every single month. I'm lifting out my portion of that evening to where we focus on the commercial, industrial, retail, hotel, and residential forecasts of the site. And so essentially, that is the speech I made that evening with some minor adjustments. But essentially, I started out by talking that I was making a Zoom speech to Nanaimo Realty a few days after we made this presentation. And in order to get ready for that speech, I looked at some previous speeches I made in Nanaimo over the years. And there was one which was a client appreciation night that RE/MAX held on January 27, 2010. And at that conference, we talked about 500% interest rates in Sweden. Yep, that's what we had in 1993. That's how long ago that was. The Asian flu, of course, the Russian crisis, market collapse, stock market crashes, and in the previous speech in April, I showed you the slides of what happened after every stock market crash and what happened after every real estate crash. And that's pretty well around the world, but in particular in North America. And so I talked about previous talks where I had in 1998 at the Outlook conferences. I talked about unemployment at 8%. And interest rates for 5-year money were 7%. So, you know, today we can get a 5-year term mortgage at 2.25%. My goodness gracious, we can get commercial money under 2%. So then it was 7%. I also talked about the butters. You know, we always in Vancouver for some reason. You go into a room, say a nice day, somebody else will say, for tomorrow it's going to rain. We were down, you know, we had the government, we didn't like it. All this kind of things going on in 1998. And so I call them the butters. And I wrote a story for the Vancouver Sun in which I pointed out 40 reasons why Vancouver was actually the place to be. And the whole idea was, my recommendation was then to say, so what, next, right? We've been there before, we can do it again. I published my book, Forget About Location, in which the main point was that timing is essential, much more essential than location. I can buy a house in Burnaby, for instance, in 1990 at 280, sell it in 1995 for 400, and by 1998, it was back down to 280. Same house, same location, and the reason was simply we had a lot of people moving in, Hong Kong Chinese moving back out, and there was all these wonderful reasons that had nothing to do with location, but clearly to understand the timing of a market and the trend as to what people do and values go where people go, and all of those basic principles really applied then and they apply now. What was it then? From 1990 to 95, the Hong Kong Chinese came to Vancouver because they were worried about mainland China. Then they realized, hey, mainland China is doing a good job with a one state, two countries kind of a thing, or two systems, one country kind of a thing, and they all went back. And in that area, then anything you bought anywhere, location had nothing to do. But I also talked about the most unreported inflation of all markets that we had ever seen in our histories. I felt like the buyer's select market would continue after an election. I mean, downtown condos were 165 a foot. We're talking, 1998, 12 years ago, right? We thought that BC was going to recover. We said not to worry about 9/11 in those days. It was a big thing. We thought it might mean more inflation, not less inflation. We would be funding money. We pointed out we had the shortest supply of condos. We talked about the inflation worldwide and hard assets, and we disputed the economists. The economists, I used to feature them year after year, where they maintain that values can be determined by the ratio of income versus price. And of course, there's nothing to do with it. We've never been affordable in Vancouver, nor in Hong Kong, New York, or London. It is when people want to be somewhere, they'll pay much more than what the average should be. It's not what it should be. And when today I see it over and over again, saying, well, the income of this city doesn't warrant the prices, and therefore they're going to go down. And then they're always surprised when instead they're going up. The Economist was neat because every year for 8 years they published this ratio of cities around the world. We were always overvalued, always. And we had a relentless climb from 1998's 278,000 to today's 1.7 million on average price. Okay, so he said buy. He told you the cities to buy, and particularly in Nanaimo, my partners and I bought a 56-suite apartment building. And again, when I look at the prices that we paid and what we had to listen to at the time as to what markets were going to do, and so clearly then in 2009 and 2010, I again showed the slide of the stock market recovery, meaning after every major stock market crash within 2 years, the markets were up 25 to 50%. And I told my subscribers, enough is enough, enough with the negative, constant reminders of how terrible things are going to be. It is it, right? And then finally, I did tell them that I thought the United States would always survive. And that's why our partners went into Phoenix and we went into Dallas and Houston. And we did extremely well because people were walking away from $200,000 condos and you could pick them up for $50,000. It was the most amazing opportunity in the world where even the Americans had no faith in their own economy. We did though, and we did very well and we were rewarded. So the point is today, we're looking at, again, a world that is just as tough as it was 10 years ago, and the biggest question 10 years ago was always, Ozzie, are we going into a depression? This is it, isn't it? This is a terrible thing. Particularly in those days, we had the Olympics, and will there be a post-Olympic bubble, and all of those kind of things. And I get this, yeah, when I say no, it isn't. But Ozzie, this is different. Right? Every time since time immemorial, 50 years, it used to be the American consumer wasn't going to do it, or the Asian flu, or the Russian crisis, or the currency crisis, or whatever it was. Whenever I said, well, no, actually, we're going to muddle through. It's going to be tough for a while, but we will work out just fine. And then we had to listen to, just want to make sure that I'm actually taping this. Okay, let's see here. Come here. Okay, so every time I had to listen to this time, it's different. So when we looked then briefly, we looked through the club agendas that we had at the time, and then I started to go into, I pointed briefly out again when we had our prices from January 1977 at 70,000 to now $1.8 million in 2016 and $1.7 million in 2020. We had sort of a minor reversal. But anyways, what I was talking about was essentially that when people saying that what is the market going to do, as if there was a market. There's no such thing as a market. CMHC comes out and says we're going to have an 18% decline in prices in Canada. But we're in Canada, in Toronto, and Montreal, and Vancouver, and Kamloops. It's ludicrous to make that assumption. They say themselves, we can't really justify the number and don't take it for granted, but it's possible. That's nonsense, because there's not such thing as a market. We have a commercial market, an office market, a retail market, a hotel market. We have a residential market. We have an individual residential market, a multifamily market. It's crazy to say that it's all going to do the same thing at the same time. I mean, today, let's face it, millions of people are rolling out of the bed in pajamas and they handle their job for companies, whether they're lawyers or bankers, right from their kitchen table. And the bosses are having an epiphany, and so we don't need all that space anymore. Gosh, I mean, we had one of our lawyers talk to us last month, so we got 18 small offices, and they're all working from home. We said, I don't need 18 offices. Obviously, you can do away with fewer, and maybe the 5-story law firm says, well, we can maybe move them all down to 4. And so big things are happening that might make these changes. They're certainly thinking about it. Maybe half of people can work in the morning, half in the afternoon. I know one firm which has actually 2 shifts of working people, office people, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, in a smaller space. And so, you have to look at your office space as a tenant with cold, practical eye. The same as an owner. Are they going to stay, these people? Both the tenants and landlords, they face challenges, but they also have opportunities. And so you have to be ready for the new world in an office space. It isn't going to be as clear as it was, but I guarantee you, everybody is thinking downsizing. because they've learned something about the fact that we are now in a world where, hey, we may not need all. And so office, things are going to change. We're going to downsize a little bit. And in some areas, you might downsize a lot. And so both the owner and the tenant have to get together and saying, are you going to stay? What is your business doing? And he has to make a plan as to what might happen down the road. And very similar it goes for industrial. Everybody says industrial is, of course, safe. Well, the Port of Vancouver is now reporting some 85% less volume in container ships, 50% total fuel sailings, and some logistic companies in Toronto reported 50% fewer inbound containers. So maybe no need to have all that storage that we used to have. And maybe we're going to import different things. Maybe we'll have more stuff that we no longer ship. And so we have to take a look. Expect the industrial tenants also to downsize. They're looking at this and maybe it can have less space. And maybe you have to assess their risk tolerance to determine whether the inventory levels are going to warrant their sort of the current growth they're in. Maybe do some different scenarios. I think industrial will be more all right than retailers and others, but it is certainly important to take a good hard look at your tenants and yourself and see now who's going to survive this. On the retail side, we're training everybody to shop online, and to say that retail is the same as residential is ridiculous. Old people that didn't even know how to turn on a computer, all of a sudden, hey, I can do this, and gosh, I push a button, from all the stuff is here. Well, fewer shoppers overall, of course, are out there. Necessity-based retailers, primary grocery, pharmacy, they'll find their traffic remains very high, but everybody else is diminished. Some non-existent, some will never reopen, and we have already seen some major retailers decided not to reopen, or certainly went into Chapter 11 to reorganize and refinance, and maybe they'll emerge brighter and stronger than ever. By the way, everybody talks about Chapter 11 as the end of the world. Chapter 7 is the end of the world. Chapter 11 is a restructuring, and let's try and get rid of some of the debtors and the people that we owe money to. But the thing is this. Before the crisis, we did a radio program last November. We said there was 1,100 malls in the United States closing. And already some of those malls were taken over by churches or by other organizations, because when one of the big stores closes, then 20 or 30 of the smaller stores that feed off the traffic from the big store, they close also. And so now what we are having is that whether it's restaurants or hair salons, that depend on daily users, but there will be a lot of competition, and some will just not survive, and other people maybe cannot pay the rent or the mortgage. So on the retail side, as an investor, stay out of it. If you own it, sell it, or certainly reposition it. Make sure you understand whether the tenant is going to stay. There's a lot of help right now on all government levels. Rental, not forgiveness, but postponement. There's mortgage postponement. Make sure that you have all that organized. And if there's little hope, cut your costs now. It's some of the hardest thing to do as a landlord and as a tenant, to say, let's not do any wishful thinking. How real is this? And then, go and try and get a new tenant, or vice versa. Maybe look for a smaller space, or maybe work with another tenant to share, or maybe sublease and have less of a cost there. On the multifamily home, CMHC actually said for April there was an 11% increase in housing starts, 90,000 in Toronto, 28,000 in Vancouver. But we have to understand that developers, they need to have a minimum number of pre-sales, or the banks will close their loan. We have 6 deals this month, fine. Next month, you don't have 6 sales. Let's talk not having your loan anymore. So the thing is this, that currently, actually, we've closed some 600 units that had bought 2 years ago, and not one of them vouched on their deal. They're all happy to move into the new residence. And so the long-term pre-sale buyer is probably going to be sitting, you know what, I'm not going to go in right now. The local buyer, as long as it's a single-family home or a townhouse, is instantly into it because he doesn't want to be in an elevator anymore, right? So we have this thing to remember that when we talk about the market, the condo market has a different kind of a problem in terms of social distancing. Single families and townhomes, are actually doing better than they did before. So you have to take a look at all of those different things, in particular when you look at older people that say, no, you know what, I'm going to move to a small town. Or families for that matter. You know how many families are there? Hey, this is actually quite nice to have my kids around, husband, I can work from home. And so maybe I should move out of this 600 square foot apartment and move to a 1,500 square feet in the valley, or buy a house and then go out and or in the interior. And therefore, when CMHC says prices are going to go down 18%, what are they talking about? We probably have a lot of people move to Vancouver Island. The Sunshine Coast is hotter than a firecracker right now in the pandemic, because people say, you know what, oh, I can buy a house. I can sell my house here and buy one on the Sunshine Coast, right? So the whole idea is that we have maybe some unique incentives for qualified buyers. So in other words, if I'm a buyer that will buy and commit myself for 2 years from now, ask for a car, ask for a second parking spot. That's worth 30, 40,000. Ask for a furniture package, something meaningful, not a bottle of wine every month for 2 years. Who needs that? Meaningful. I've even seen one situation where the owner of a building gives you 2 cars with your condo. Now they're small cars, but the key is this: car sales are down 75%. And so if he was going to reduce the price anyways, but he can't because 60% of the sale had maybe taken place at $1 million, he can't sell it to you at 900 even if he wanted to. And maybe you can find that $80,000, $60,000. You've seen 60,000 on Mercedes, Teslas, all that included. And if you have faith in your local market, in your community, and in the world at large, this may very well be that deal of a lifetime you can make, right? The future still is in multifamily rental buildings as an owner, because we will also see a lot of millennials staying in the rental world. They want to live now, they want to be downtown where the action is, and they will fill that rental building. So in general, then residential markets sharply lower sales. No doubt about it. But we also have sharply lower listings. I'm not being some sort of a Pollyannish kind of a look, but in Toronto 2 years ago, listings increased by 200% and sales went down by 30. Well, that had a huge impact on prices. In Vancouver, it's the opposite. And right now, by the way, in Toronto, it's that way too. 60% decline in sales, but also 55% decline in listings, and the same in Vancouver. In the month of May, we're expecting the listing ratio to be really tight. So there's nothing out there that you want to buy, just isn't there. So sales down, listings are down, means prices stay even or even go up a little. For maybe expecting them actually go up maybe 4 or 5%. So when you look at markets, what will they do? Keep all that in mind, that you have to understand that yes, residential will go sideways probably, but not all residential is the same. And maybe the condo market downtown will get hurt more, but not so much because of pandemic, but because the city forbids B&B. So all these B&B put their rental unit on the market, and so that drives the rental value down. It's a good thing for the tenant, but that's the reason, not the virus or some crazy marketing might happen. So we think young people will probably stay in high-tech companies. They want to be downtown. Families and older people will move out of town. And if you in the residential investment market, you might try and figure out and listen to my ozbuzz number 46 and see which cities you should go into. Why not a Kamloops with 5 golf courses, second largest ski resort, where the house price is a third of Vancouver's? Why not Edmonton? Why not some of those cities, if that's where the trend is going anyhow, and you can live there and you're happy there? I mean, imagine in Parksville, no parking meters. That alone has to be good enough for me. Anyhow, the point is, whether it's the Kootenays or what it is, look for the deal of the lifetime. I think as any kind of investor or homeowner today, you want to make a deal, you want to bargain hard, you want to understand the concept of stink bits too. Okay. Now, hotels, that to me will be the biggest crash. We already have too many hotels. Many will not reopen in the same form: social distance, half occupancy, and the restaurants, the revenues, the banquets, all of the gathering revenue is gone for a while. And so we'll have to rethink a lot of those assets. Some people say their old age homes will move in. No way. There won't be any more old age homes. That's where all the deaths were on the pandemic. I mean, when you look at 80% of the deaths in Canada were in these old age homes. There's no way that people will want to be where all they share the same air conditioning system. until they have a filtration system together with the air conditioning that separates my unit here. The ludicrous thing in the cruise ships was that they all shared the same filtration system, made me stay in my cabin, and then I had to grease everybody else there. So point is this. Residentially, we're going to be okay, but I would stay out of real estate investment trusts. I would stay out of all of these things. I've discussed that in my ozbuzz blog at length, so I don't want to go there. But if you look at ozbuzz 39, 40, 41, 42, that's my basic philosophy. Why we're going to have more inflation, not less. Why it's likely not deflation. Why you have to understand the trend, you have to understand timing, and you have to understand the cycles that we're operating in and the track of the future. And by the way, those principles are all in my various books, expressed dozens of times. Even Mr. Trump, our American president, picked one of my chapters in his book, Real Estate, the Best Advice I Ever Got. So it's all there. My views haven't changed. Now, one of the big things, of course, is inward migration. Will it continue? Now, we hear that the Canadian government is approving immigration just as before. The goal was 350,000 immigrants. The third quarter last year, we had 208,000 immigrants into Canada. Now it's stopped. Why? Because of the virus. But these people are approved. So once we can fly again, we will have more people here. As I said in my previous speeches, the Organization for Investment in Real Estate Worldwide is rating Canada as number 3 in the world. So the guy goes into his financial office in London or Dubai and says, where should I put my money? Well, Canada has the safest banks, safe legal system, pretty neat people, you might want to consider it. And so we will definitely see that money coming back. Now, in our world, we have car sales that are down 75%. I mean, we have opportunity there. Think about it. You could not stop, and you always wanted to have that $100,000 car, but, by the time you put the down payment and the options and this and today, I've seen a beautiful CLS Mercedes, it's a $100,000 car. You can assume the lease at $1,000 a month and no down payments. Remember that somebody paid already 20 grand into that. The other thing is there's a whole bunch of leases out there. They actually will pay you to assume the lease. So we've seen a GLC Mercedes, which is about a $70,000 SUV. They'll pay you 5 grand to accept the lease at $950 a month. Now there's only maybe 2 years left, but hey, when have you had an opportunity like that? The same goes, of course, for boats. If you say boats, I'm a boater. I'm looking at boats, and there are some deals. They're not as great yet because we're going towards the summer, but I guarantee you by the end of the summer, you will make a smoking deal on a boat, right? Look at it's not. Napoleon Hill said, in every adversity, there's a seed within it that is an even greater benefit as the adversity. And so we're seeing it all the time. And there may be even an assumption of a commercial lease for space that you got at a much better price because you make a deal with the tenant or the owner, right? So you can buy also perhaps something where people are really scared to death and they walk away from the deal, particularly somebody that's been there for 20 years. Maybe you can get that cash flow real estate. The big thing is that you have to believe in your future and you have to believe in yourself. And you have to look together with your learning from the past and looking forward with confidence that you have to live today. And the one thing is you wanted to get away and have a holiday anyhow. Now you're at home. They tell you you must stay home for 2 months. Whoopee. Now instead of crying about it, look at this. It's a beautiful opportunity now. Right now, get away from some of the stimulus that's out there. We have too much stimulus. And in fact, all that stimulus will not stimulate you anymore. It drives you crazy. You walk in the morning and you look at your talking heads and they're all positive. And then in the afternoon, the similar talking heads talk negative. And they both make sense. They don't know. And they don't know, some of them, that they don't know. And so how the heck are you going to make a decision that is born out of some mystical evaluation? What you do know is that had you bought a house in Vancouver in 1980 for $100,000, that's worth now $1.6 million. Now that's what you do know. 295 different crises and terrible happenings that we've come through it all and muddled through. And we will also muddle through in here. But you must get away from all that input into your brain. You got to create some space in your brain, stop the input. Put some new structure back in your life without the talking heads, you know. And I mean what we said before. Get up, make your bed, feel about it. Bed first thing. Look at the early morning sun when I talk about smell the roses. I mean, stop the car, get out of the car, bend down and smell the roses. Look at your email only from 11 till 12. I tell you, if you can do that, change your mind dramatically. Everybody says, I'm going to not listen to my phone. You can't do it. I challenge you. Can't do it. Right now, take a look. Where's your phone? I guarantee it's within 6 inches of your hand. Probably your right hand, right? Right? So the thing is this, your dislocation from the office, for some people, is going to be good. It may be the greatest thing ever happened to you. I know people that got fired and said, man, I wish that fired me before. It forced me to reevaluate my life. And so don't talk, don't watch TV, read, and block out some time for work, and then block out time to think, you know. You come to my house, I have set up a whole room just where I don't allow myself, no phones, no TV, and I'm allowing myself to take a book in with me. But most of the time I go look out and I think. And so really when you want to change is you want to get away from stimulus, as I said earlier, and then turn off the TV. Well, we always say that. No, I mean, turn it off. Well, how am I going to turn it off? Take the battery out of your remote. That'll do it for you, right? And you say, okay, I'm just not going to watch TV. Well, what am I going to do? Most of us don't even know what to do. Go for a walk. Do whatever you like to do, right? But learn this experience to experience yourself. You know, we talked about it many times before that I believe that the greatest asset you have is you. We always talk real estate equity. Well, the equity in your brains, your physical equity is your body, you know. Your equity, do you have anything left, or is it all used up? Maybe it's time to replenish that equity of your physical body. And what about your mind, your thinking? You're not here by accident, you know. What about your belief system and your friends and who you hang with? You know, it's a great time to evaluate this thing. The big important thing that this time, bluffing is out. Truth is in. And what you want to do is live your life and live your life large. Take care. Bye.